September 16th, 1975. Washington, D.C. The caucus room of the Russell Senate Office Building is suffocatingly hot. The air is thick with the scent of stale tobacco smoke and nervous perspiration. Under the harsh glare of the television lights, a hush falls over the crowded room. Senator Frank Church sits behind a high wooden dais, his expression grim. Beside him sits William Colby, the Director of Central Intelligence. But the eyes of the world are not on the men. They are fixed on the object sitting on the table between them. It looks like a standard Colt .45 pistol. But it is wrong. There is a strange, bulky scope mounted on top. A battery pack is integrated into the handle. It looks like a prop from a science fiction movie. Yet the silence in the room confirms that this is no toy. Senator Church lifts the weapon. He aims it at the ceiling. He explains that this weapon does not fire bullets. It fires a dart made of frozen water and a toxin so deadly that a microscopic amount can stop a human heart in seconds. The dart melts inside the body. No entry wound, no exit wound, no trace of poison in the autopsy. A perfect murder, disguised as a natural heart attack. For decades, this weapon was a myth, a whisper in the corridors of power. But on this Tuesday morning in 1975, the veil is lifted. The world stares into the barrel of the CIA's darkest secret. And yet, the gun itself is merely the tip of the iceberg. What lies beneath is a story of mad science, illegal experiments, and a government agency that decided it had the right to play God. For years, we believed the Cold War was fought with nuclear missiles and tanks. We were wrong. The true war was fought in the shadows, in sterile laboratories where scientists turned nature's deadliest toxins into weapons of political control. The gun on Senator Church's table was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of a time when the line between national security and criminal insanity had completely vanished. Welcome to the archives. Welcome to Annalist. To understand the existence of a heart attack gun, we cannot start in 1970. We must rewind the clock. Back to the paranoia of the early 1950s. The world is divided. The Iron Curtain has descended across Europe. In Washington, there is a pervasive fear that the Soviet Union is winning the war for the human mind. Intelligence reports, often exaggerated, suggest that the KGB is developing mind-control drugs, truth serums, and undetectable poisons. The Central Intelligence Agency, formed in 1947, is still young. It is desperate to close this gap. They need an edge. They need a department that operates outside the boundaries of conventional warfare and outside the boundaries of ethics. Enter the Technical Services Staff, or TSS, later known as the Technical Services Division. This was the CIA's real-life Q branch. But unlike the movies, their gadgets were not designed for glamour. They were designed for subversion, sabotage, and silence. And at the helm of the chemical division of this unit was a man named Sidney Gottlieb. Remember that name, Sidney Gottlieb. History often remembers the generals and the presidents. It rarely remembers the chemists. But Sidney Gottlieb arguably had more power over life and death than any soldier on the front lines. He was a man of contradictions, a club-footed folk dancing enthusiast who lived in a rustic cabin without running water, drinking goat's milk and reading Buddhist philosophy. Yet, by day, he was the CIA's poisoner-in-chief. In April 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles approves a top-secret program. Its codename is MK Ultra. While popular culture remembers MK Ultra for its LSD experiments and mind control, a significant portion of its budget was dedicated to something far more tangible: assassination. Gottlieb's mission was clear: find a way to kill a target without leaving a trace. The agency called this plausible deniability. If a foreign leader dropped dead, it had to look like an accident, a stroke, or a heart attack. If the autopsy revealed a bullet or arsenic, it was an act of war. If the autopsy revealed nothing, it was just bad luck. The search for the perfect biological weapon leads Gottlieb to the Special Operations Division at Fort Detrick, Maryland. This is a sprawling army base, a fortress of biology. Here, hidden away from the public eye, the U.S. Army and the CIA form a secret partnership. They begin to stockpile the deadliest substances known to man: anthrax, smallpox, tularemia, and shellfish toxin. The toxin that would eventually load the heart attack gun is saxitoxin. It is derived from the Alaskan butter clam. It is 500 times more deadly than cyanide. But its true value lies in its subtlety. It paralyzes the respiratory system and stops the heart. But within minutes of death, it degrades. It vanishes from the bloodstream. A coroner looking for poison would find nothing. He would sign the death certificate as myocardial infarction. Heart attack. By the early 1960s, the atmosphere in Washington changes. The Kennedy administration is in power. The Cold War is heating up in Cuba, in the Congo, in Vietnam. The CIA is under immense pressure to remove political obstacles. The theoretical research at Fort Detrick is suddenly in high demand for practical application. The agency begins to develop delivery systems. Poisons are useless if you cannot get them into the target. Gottlieb's team becomes creative. They design pens that fire poison darts. They infest diving suits with fungus. They lace cigars with botulism. They create handkerchiefs dusted with brucellosis. But the Holy Grail remains a weapon that can be used at range. A weapon that guarantees a kill with absolute silence. The engineers at the Technical Services Division begin drafting the blueprints for a handgun unlike anything the world has seen. It uses an electric battery to fire, not gunpowder. Gunpowder creates an explosion. Explosion creates noise. This weapon must be silent. The projectile must be aerodynamic, yet fragile enough to dissolve upon impact. The non-discernible microbio inoculator. That is the official bureaucratic name they give it. A boring name for a terrifying device. It is capable of firing a tiny dart, no thicker than a human hair, up to 100 meters. The target might feel a slight sting, like a mosquito bite. They would slap their neck, check for a bug, and find nothing. Minutes later, they would collapse. While the scientists in Maryland are perfecting the weapon, the CIA's covert operators are scouring the globe for targets. The list of potential victims reads like a who's who of the Cold War. Patrice Lumumba of the Congo. Rafael Trujillo of the Dominican Republic. And of course, the obsession of the agency. Fidel Castro. The stage is set. The weapon is ready. The poison is frozen. But as we delve deeper into the archives, a disturbing question arises. We know the gun existed. We saw it in Senator Church's hand. But was it ever used? And if the CIA was willing to build a heart attack gun, what else did they build that we didn't see on that table in 1970? The year is 1960. The Cold War has shifted its center of gravity. It is no longer just frozen in the tundra of Siberia or the divided streets of Berlin. It has arrived in the Caribbean. Fidel Castro has marched into Havana, and to the men in Washington, his beard and his cigar are symbols of an intolerable defiance. The order comes down from the highest levels of the Eisenhower administration and later the Kennedy White House. Castro must be removed. This obsession triggers what historians now call Operation Mongoose. It is here that the technology behind the heart attack gun finds its intended purpose. The gun itself is merely a delivery system. The true weapon is the saxitoxin frozen in the dart. But Sidney Gottlieb and his team at the Technical Services Division realize that a gun is not always practical. You cannot always walk up to a dictator and shoot him, even silently. Sometimes the poison needs to be intimate. The files declassified by the Church Committee reveal a series of assassination plots that sound like the scribblings of a madman, yet they were funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars. The shellfish toxin, the same lethal agent meant for the heart attack gun, is repurposed. In one scenario, the CIA prepares a box of Castro's favorite cigars. These are not merely poisoned. They are treated with a botulinum toxin so potent that a person would die simply by putting the cigar in their mouth. They do not even need to light it. But the agency needs access. They need someone close to Castro. In a twist that rivals any noir film, the CIA reaches out to the criminal underworld. They recruit the mafia. Mob figures like Johnny Rosselli and Sam Giancana, who lost their lucrative casinos in Havana when Castro took over, are eager for revenge. The CIA hands them the poison pills, capsules filled with the gelatinous goo of the saxitoxin. The plan is to slip them into Castro's chocolate milkshake at the Hotel Libre. Imagine the scene. A bustling cafeteria in Havana, the clinking of glasses, the humid air, an assassin, trembling, reaching into his pocket for the capsule. He tries to slip it into the drink, but the capsule freezes. It sticks to the side of the freezer in the intricate hiding spot where it was stored. When the assassin tries to retrieve it, the capsule breaks open, spilling its lethal contents uselessly. Castro survives, completely unaware that death was inches away. The perfect crime fails not because of security, but because of physics. While the attempts on Castro are often remembered as a dark comedy of errors, the agency's activities in Africa are far grimmer. In the Congo, a charismatic leader named Patrice Lumumba is rising. The U.S. fears he will align with the Soviets. This time, Sidney Gottlieb does not trust the mafia. He trusts himself. In the autumn of 1960, the chief scientist of the CIA packs a diplomat's bag. Inside, there are no documents. There is a lethal kit. It contains a tube of toothpaste laced with a deadly disease indigenous to the region, and vials of the Fort Detrick biological agents. Gottlieb travels personally to Leopoldville, the capital of the Congo. He meets with the CIA station chief, Larry Devlin. The instructions are vague, but understood. Eliminate the target. Devlin, to his credit, or perhaps out of fear, hesitates. He keeps the poisons in his office safe. He agonizes over the order. Who authorized this? He asks. The answer is a silence that implies presidential authority. Ultimately, the poisons are never used on Lumumba. His political enemies capture and execute him brutally before the CIA can act. Gottlieb takes his lethal kit, walks to the banks of the Congo River, and dumps the toxins into the water. The evidence dissolves into the muddy current. But the saxitoxin had another use. One that brings us back to the skies. Before the heart attack gun was revealed to the public, the toxin was already famous, though no one knew its name. May 1st, 1960, a U-2 spy plane is shot down over the Soviet Union. The pilot is Francis Gary Powers. Pilots like Powers were given a special piece of equipment, a silver dollar coin. It looked like ordinary currency, but it had a hidden modification, a tiny pin hidden in the grooves. Inside the pin was the saxitoxin. This was not for the enemy. It was for the pilot. It was a suicide device, if capture was imminent, if torture was guaranteed. The pilot was instructed to prick their skin with the pin. Death would follow in seconds. When Powers was captured, he did not use the pin. The Soviets found it. They analyzed it. They paraded it before the world as proof of American treachery. They asked, why does a pilot need a poisoned needle? The CIA claimed it was for dogs, to defend against guard dogs. The world laughed, but the reality was somber. The same toxin designed to silently kill foreign leaders was also designed to silently kill American patriots, to keep the agency's secrets safe. By the mid-1960s, the Technical Services Division is operating at full capacity. The heart attack gun is refined. The scope is improved. The battery life is extended. It sits in the armory, a masterpiece of lethal engineering. But a storm is gathering in Washington. The war in Vietnam is turning the public against the government. The Watergate scandal breaks. Trust in the establishment collapses. Investigative journalists begin to dig. They hear rumors of mind control, of poisons, of secret wars. Seymour Hersh of the New York Times publishes a bombshell report in December 1974 about the CIA's illegal domestic spying. This triggers a domino effect. The Senate creates a select committee to investigate intelligence activities. At the head of the table sits Senator Frank Church. The CIA is in panic mode. The current director, Richard Helms, orders the destruction of all files related to MK Ultra and the bioweapons program. it is a massive purge. Thousands of documents are shredded. Tapes are burned. The history of the program is being erased in real time. But they miss something. A cache of financial records, expense reports, invoices for biological materials. They are found in a neglected storage facility, and among the surviving witnesses, a few are willing to talk. One of them tells the committee about a warehouse in Baltimore and a laboratory at Fort Detrick where the special weapons were kept. Senator Church demands the weapons be produced. The CIA hesitates. They stall. But eventually, they have no choice. They open the vault. And this brings us back to that day in 1975. The gun is placed on the table. But there is a detail about that hearing that most people miss. A detail that changes the entire meaning of the story. To understand the gravity of the gun on the table, in 1975, we must look at a document signed 6 years earlier. November 25, 1969. President Richard Nixon stands before the press. The horrors of biological warfare, the idea of plagues and silent killers, have become too politically toxic, even for the Cold War. Nixon makes a historic announcement. He renounces the use of biological weapons. He orders the United States military and intelligence agencies to destroy their stockpiles. The order is clear. It is absolute. The anthrax, the smallpox, the Venezuelan equine encephalitis, and the shellfish toxin. All of it must be incinerated. The scientists at Fort Detrick begin the grim task of boiling and burning years of research. The ovens run hot. The vials are destroyed. Officially, the United States is out of the poison business. But in the shadows of the CIA, a different conversation is taking place. Sidney Gottlieb, the poisoner-in-chief, receives the order. He knows that the saxitoxin, the ammunition for the heart attack gun, is incredibly difficult to produce. It took years to extract just a few grams from tons of Alaskan butter clams. It is priceless. To destroy it seems to him a waste of strategic capability. So, a decision is made. A decision that technically constitutes treason. Gottlieb and his deputy, Dr. Nathan Gordon, decide to go rogue. They do not destroy the shellfish toxin. Instead, they move it. They pack the deadly vials into a trunk. They drive them away from the military oversight of Fort Detrick and transport them to a nondescript CIA warehouse in Baltimore. There, buried under old files and dusty equipment, the heart attack ammunition sits, waiting. For 5 years, it sits there. The President thinks it is gone. The Congress thinks it is gone. But the weapon remains, a sleeping dragon in a cardboard box. This brings us back to the moment Senator Frank Church holds the gun. The shock in the room is not just about the technology. The shock comes from the testimony of CIA Director William Colby. When asked why the toxin was not destroyed as per the President's order, Colby's answer is chillingly bureaucratic. He explains that a middle management scientist, Dr. Gordon, had exercised his own judgment. He had kept it just in case. The implication is terrifying. If a mid-level scientist can override the order of the President of the United States regarding a weapon of mass destruction. Who is really in charge? The camera zooms in on the weapon itself. We must appreciate the engineering. It was not merely a handgun. It was a modified Colt M1911A1. The standard barrel had been removed. In its place was a smooth-bore barrel designed to reduce friction. The bullet was not a bullet at all. It was a sabot, a carrier device that would disintegrate or fall away, launching the tiny ice dart. The dart was 3 millimeters long, thinner than a sewing needle. To ensure it didn't melt before firing, the gun had a localized cooling mechanism in the chamber. The battery handle provided the electrical charge to propel the dart silently. It didn't use an explosion, it used induction. The dart would travel at hundreds of feet per second, piercing clothing and skin effortlessly. Upon impact, the victim would feel the sting. They might slap their neck. They might look around for a bee, but the ice is already melting. The saxitoxin is entering the bloodstream. It blocks the sodium channels in the nerve cells. The signals from the brain to the muscles stop. The diaphragm freezes. The heart stutters. Collapse. Death. Autopsy verdict. Natural causes. But the gun was not the only horror revealed in these hearings. Emboldened by the discovery of the toxin, the committee presses harder. They uncover the suicide glasses, a pair of ordinary-looking spectacles. If an agent was captured, they could chew on the tip of the temple piece. Inside was a cyanide pellet. Crunch, swallow, die. They uncover the automobile engine buster, a powder that, when dropped into a gas tank, would fuse the engine block of a car, stopping a target vehicle without a shot being fired. They uncover aerosol sprays designed to induce asthma attacks in perfectly healthy targets. The American public watches these revelations on their television screens with a mixture of fascination and horror. This is the era of post-Watergate cynicism. They had suspected the government lied to them about money and politics. Now they realize the government has been running a Murder Inc. out of a basement in Maryland. Yet, amidst the flashing cameras and the moral outrage, the architect of this program is missing. Sidney Gottlieb, the man who approved the gun, the man who saved the toxin. Where is he? Before the hearings began, Gottlieb had retired. But he didn't just leave, he erased himself. He drove to his farm in Virginia. He lived in a house that was formerly a slave cabin. He spent his days tending to his goats and practicing folk dancing. When Congress called him to testify, he claimed amnesia. I do not recall. I have no memory of that. The man who remembered the chemical composition of obscure poisons suddenly could not remember the orders he gave to kill foreign leaders. He was granted immunity in exchange for his testimony. He sat there, a gray-haired, stuttering man, looking nothing like a villain. He admitted to the experiments. He admitted to the drugs, but he showed no remorse. In his mind, he was a patriot. He believed that the Soviet Union was a monster, and to fight a monster, he had to become one. The gun on the table became a cultural icon. It appeared in newspapers around the globe. But then, The hearing ended. The lights were turned off. The cameras went home. And the question remains, what happened to the gun? Today, if you visit the CIA Museum in Langley, Virginia, a museum that is, ironically, closed to the general public, you can see it. It sits behind glass, bathed in soft light. A relic of the Cold War, a curiosity. But historians and defense analysts ask a different question. They don't ask where the gun is. They ask where the technology went. Did the CIA simply stop researching silent assassination because Frank Church yelled at them? Or did the program simply go deeper underground? We know that in the decades that followed, the nature of assassination changed. It moved away from complicated electric guns and ice darts. It moved toward something even more insidious. The heart attack gun was an analog weapon in an increasingly digital world. But the biological principle, the idea of the untraceable kill, did not die in 1975. It evolved. As we look at the geopolitical landscape of the 21st century, we see echoes of Gottlieb's work. We see dissidents falling ill with mysterious nerve agents. We see radioactive tea. We see perfume bottles filled with Novichok. The delivery systems have changed. The brazenness has changed. But the philosophy remains identical to the one birthed at Fort Detrick. The state has the power to kill, and if done correctly, the world will never know for sure. However, there is one final chapter to this story. A chapter that deals not with the weapon, but with the human cost of the experiments that led to it. Because before the gun could be built, the toxins had to be tested. And they weren't just tested on animals. The most chilling aspect of the CIA's biological weapons program is not the hardware. It is not the frozen darts or the battery-operated handguns. It is the mindset. To build a weapon like the heart attack gun, you must first dehumanize the target. You must view life as a chemistry equation to be solved. And eventually, that dehumanization turns inward. The agency did not just test these theories on foreign enemies. They tested them on their own. Enter Frank Olson. Frank Olson was not a spy. He was a bacteriologist, a family man. He worked at Fort Detrick, shoulder to shoulder with the men developing the toxins for the CIA. He knew the secrets. He knew about the aerosols and the anthrax. But in November 1953, the program turned on him. During a retreat at a cabin in Deep Creek Lake, Maryland, Sidney Gottlieb decided to conduct an experiment. He wanted to test the effects of LSD, a hallucinogen the agency was obsessed with, on unsuspecting scientists. He slipped the drug into a bottle of Cointreau. Frank Olson poured a glass. He drank it. What followed was a descent into madness. Olson, unaware he had been drugged, panicked. He spiraled into paranoia. The CIA handlers, realizing their mistake, took him to New York City, supposedly for psychiatric help. They checked into the Hotel Statler. Room 1018, November 28th, 1953, 2:30 a.m. The crash of breaking glass echoes through the night. Frank Olson falls 13 stories to the pavement of 7th Avenue. He dies on impact. For 22 years, his family was told it was a suicide, a work-related accident caused by stress. It was only when the documents related to the heart attack gun and the MK Ultra program surfaced in 1975 that the truth emerged. The President of the United States, Gerald Ford, had to invite the Olson family to the Oval Office and apologize on behalf of the government. Frank Olson's death is the ghost that haunts the heart attack gun. He is the reminder that when a government operates in total secrecy, without oversight, the first casualties are often its own citizens. The same laboratory that froze the shellfish toxin for the perfect murder was the laboratory that destroyed Frank Olson's mind. So, what is the legacy of this weapon? The heart attack gun itself was likely never used in the field. By the time the technology was perfected, the political risks were too high. The sheer existence of the weapon became its own liability. It was a relic of a time when the CIA believed it could fix geopolitical problems with a single, silent shot. But we must not be naive. The retirement of the gun does not mean the retirement of the method. In the years since Senator Church held that pistol, the art of assassination has not disappeared. It has simply become more sophisticated. The frozen dart was ingenious, but it had a range of only 100 meters. Today, we live in a world of drone warfare, where a target can be eliminated from 5,000 miles away. We live in a world of radiological poisons like polonium-210, which leaves a glowing trail of radiation, but is just as lethal as the shellfish toxin. The heart attack gun sits in the CIA museum today. It is an artifact, like a musket or a sword. Visitors look at it and marvel at the James Bond nature of the Cold War. They smile at the absurdity of it. But the historian looks at it and sees something else. The gun represents a capability. It represents the fact that nearly 50 years ago, the government possessed the technology to kill anyone, anywhere, without leaving a trace. If that is what they could do with 1970s technology, with analog batteries and frozen water, what can they do today? The files are declassified now. We know about the gun. We know about the toxin. We know about the experiments. But the true mystery is not what we found in the archives. The true mystery is what was burned before the investigators arrived. What weapons were destroyed that we will never see? What toxins were poured down the drain? The heart attack gun serves as a permanent warning. It is a symbol of the thin line between national security and state-sanctioned murder. It reminds us that in the world of intelligence, the most dangerous weapon is not the one you hear. It is the one you never see coming. History is full of shadows, and some of those shadows are armed.